Hello there, it's Loren. I'm here at Tanglewood on another spectacularly beautiful Friday morning. I hope you're doing well. I'd love to know who's with me, so feel free to share who you are and where you are if you'd like. We're going to be talking today about something you probably haven't heard about before. That's the coronavirus, right? Old news now. It seems to be all that's on most people's minds. Not true completely, of course. I know there's other things, and I hear from people all the time with questions about many other things, of course. And I think that's really healthy. You know, we should continue to live our lives and not be completely burdened by this particular issue. But this is an issue that's affecting all of us in significant ways, and so we are going to be focusing on the coronavirus today. As always, if you have a question, if you do a super chat, I'm gonna come to your question. I'm thinking I may actually hold off on those, though. I'm gonna say my piece, and then I'll come back and answer questions in the order they show up. Super chat's obviously getting priority, right? So just so everyone's clear where we are, I see Stephanie, you are here. Good morning, good to see you. I'm doing fine. Again, we're going to come back to these questions. Jerry, how are you doing? Good to see you. Sylvia, I'm glad you're here. Fellow from Florida. Hope life is good to you in Florida. Hello, Judy and Helen. Nice to see you all. The other 20 of you or so, almost 25 of you now, more than 25 of you that are here, feel free to share as well. Shiv, good to see you. I hope you're doing well. So, Tanya, nice to see you from South Africa. I hope you're doing well. I hope to be seeing you soon. So, what's going on? Hello, Tony. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that very much. I have to say, this isn't surprising. You might be annoyed with me because this has been going on so long, but I probably could have used a little bit more sleep. Life has been super busy for me here, and I'm not going to talk to him. But we finally, in fact, I'll share some good news with you before we get into coronavirus, which isn't all good news. The whole thing is crazy. We're in an amazing time. I don't think it's all bad. I mean, I believe there's always opportunity. And one of the opportunities in front of us right now, and I've talked about this before, is that we now have the time. Most of you are probably home. You've either been asked or required to stay home, and that creates an opportunity that we don't normally have. And the opportunity is to actually focus on ourselves, okay? To learn to be with your emotions, to discover who you really are and what's really important to you, to do some of the most important emotional and spiritual work, which is difficult to do when we're mired in the day-to-day activities of living these days. Right now, there's an opportunity because most of you are home with far less to do than usual. Now, some of you may still be working, may still be going to jobs if you're doing something that is considered essential. Some of you work from home, and your life may not be very different. I live here, I work here. My commute, that's my bedroom door. It's a short commute. I've been busy all morning. I've had very little free time since I woke up this morning with calls, with consultations, and Skype coaching with people fasting. I still have staff that's coming into work. We're not locked down here, and they want to get paid, and I'm happy to pay them to the extent that I'm able to. But we're keeping people working. I have offered anyone who feels like it's not safe to come to work and wants to stay home, that's fine. But we're still busy, and some good news. So for 25 months, we have been working on trying to refinance this place, purchase an adjacent farm. We're on 10 acres. That's 4 hectares here. And excuse me, we finally signed the documents On Monday afternoon, now all along, let me back up. So Tanglewood is a Costa Rican corporation, and I need to have a legal representative, not a lawyer. We have lawyers, but I need a legal representative who is a Tico, is a Costa Rican. It can't be me. And so one of my staff members who I trust completely, an amazing person, I mean, just an amazing guy, he's the legal representative of the company. And so the idea was that he would be the one that would need to go to this closing to sign the documents, which we thought would be here, local, in the closest city to us, Nicoya. On Monday, around midday, they said the closing is tomorrow in 24 hours, and I need to be there. And because I have hours of calls every morning, the only way for that to work was for me to get to the city on Monday night so I could wake up there, do my calls, and then be at the closing, because otherwise the alternative would be to be driving in the morning and not be able to make my calls with people. And so at the last minute, I had to pack up, get a hotel, get to the city, 4.5 hours away, spend the night there, do my calls, come back the next day. Turned out that, the disbursement was supposed to be the next day. This employee came back from that meeting. Instead of having the checks directly paid to the payees, they sent the checks to me to disperse myself a day late yesterday. So I spent yesterday going and doing that. It's, there's been a lot of that kind of stuff happening. And, but the good news is we've done the refinance. That helps us a little bit as our costs will come down. Included in that money, we now own the 27 acres next door. So we're now on 15 hectares or 37 acres. And that's a lot more room to plant fruit trees. That's exciting. Some very cool things. We've got about 400, maybe 500 fruit trees ready to plant right now. And we're waiting for the rain to start in about a month. 4 or 5 weeks from now, it starts raining again. Rains every day for about 7 months with a short break in July. And we'll start planting in May. We're probably going to build some swales over there, permaculture technique to manage the water, because we get a lot of water in 7 months and then no water for 5. We want to make sure that we're retaining as much water in the land as possible. But it's very exciting that this has finally happened after, I've been negotiating and planning and, contracted to buy that land 2.5 years ago. And it's just taken this bank forever to get this done. It's been crazy. And it's cost us a fortune in the meantime. So it's done. That's very positive. Some very cool things happening. For those of you interested or already involved in the community, it may be a while before we start planting trees there, because we have to figure out exactly where everything's going to happen. But on this land next door to us, this 11 hectares, we're not doing much, if any, building. And that means we can plant 7,000 or 8,000 fruit trees, and that's food that will be available for the community once the community is going. So we're going to have a jump start on getting trees in the ground, because it could be another year before we're actually planting in the community. So in that first year, most trees take 4 or 5 years to start producing, with exceptions. Grafted trees produce much more quickly. Papayas and bananas, which are both grasses, produce in under a year, 9 to 12 months typically to start producing. So some very cool things going on, and I'm excited about that. But it's been a very, very busy time. It's not like I'm resting here because the world is shut down. Hasn't really shifted much for me. It's been a little crazier than usual. I've actually been in San Jose, 4 hours away, as I said, 3 times in the last 3 weeks, and had to drive to Nicaragua, which was also 3.5, 4 hours, and then have to fight to get back into the country because they didn't want to let me in because of the condition of my old passport before I got the new one last week. So finally, all of that is done. Hopefully, we can get settled back into the business of just working with clients, getting a book done, etc. So that's the preamble. Some cool things going on. Again, thank you for sharing. I see some congratulations. Do you really think you wouldn't be benefited by a prolonged water fast? Well, I've done several dozen prolonged water fasts, and I know that what happens for me is I feel perfectly fine, which means there's very little cleansing going on. So I know this for a fact because I've done it over and over again. Thanks for asking. All right, I just happen to see that bottom question, the last thing that shows up on my screen here right now. Okay, so coronavirus, right? That's the plan for today. I'm going to ask people, if you're willing to keep your questions to this subject. Although, I mean, that's up to you. But that's really what I'm hoping to focus on today. I think it's important, and I think there's some crazy things going on. And I know many of you here are already with me. Like, you get it. You're awake. You're paying attention. You're probably aware of some of these things. You're probably watching some of what's out there. I mean, I'm not the type of person that accepts every conspiracy theory that comes down the pike. There are people that like jump on every bandwagon. Oh yeah, that must be that, right? I've talked about this before. That's not me. I believe in actually investigating and asking simple questions and really trying to get a sense of what's going on. But I'm going to share with you today what I've uncovered so far. And again, I mean, let's be completely clear that I can't know anything, right? I mean, I'm here. I'm not in a position to go to these places and question these people. But for instance, there's a tremendous amount of information that's coming out. There are people that are putting out videos. There are health professionals, doctors, and others who have made written statements, some of them anonymously because they're afraid, of losing their jobs or perhaps being assassinated for people that are high enough profile. Others that have been willing to speak more freely. So let's look at a few facts. First of all, coronaviruses have been around forever. Science has known about coronaviruses now for about 40 years, roughly. I don't remember exactly when they were first discovered, but it's been roughly 40 years. And what they say is that colds are typically caused by a coronavirus. Now, again, I don't happen to believe that pathogens cause disease. That's a kind of a different discussion, although, I mean, it certainly ties into what we're talking about here. This was Pasteur. Pasteur's idea was that the pathogen causes the disease. Beauchamp and others said, no, it's the condition of the host. It's the terrain that creates the condition, yes or no, right? This is what happens. It depends on what's going on here. If I don't have the terrain, let's talk about bacterial infections. Everyone encounters the bacteria. The same is true with viruses. Everyone's going to encounter it. But everyone, in a space like a classroom, a place of work, everyone's going to encounter these things. If they're there, everyone's going to encounter them. Not everyone gets sick. If the pathogen caused the disease, everyone should get sick. But that's not what happens. What happens is only certain people do. Who does? Well, it's typically those people who have the conditions that pathogen, the bacteria, in this case, wants. Now, I'm separating bacteria from viruses because although there's conflicting information out there, what I started learning 30 years ago in the study of natural hygiene is that viruses are fragments of tissue. They're not living organisms. They're dead fragments of tissue. And in fact, I actually saw on one site, and I don't remember now exactly where this was, it was a scientific page talking about how the body produces, and they weren't focusing on this, but they were saying, they were talking about like how rapid these things happen. And I was saying, yeah, the body produces viruses at this rate. Yeah, the body produces them, right? The toxic cell is excreting fragments of RNA and DNA. And that's what viruses are. They're not causing anything, and they're not alive. They cannot reproduce the way that bacteria does. Viruses replicate inside a living cell because the cell's producing them. They're not replicating on their own. If you isolate them and put them in a petri dish, nothing happens. Bacteria, yeah, they replicate all by themselves. So first of all, there's all that. And I forgot where I was headed with that, but it's important, I think, to understand maybe that much at least about these pathogens. So they were studying the coronavirus, and they said, okay, they're everywhere, they're ubiquitous, and they're not really worth focusing on because they don't seem to make people sick. right? They're saying these are what tend to cause colds, but people aren't dying from coronaviruses. There's other viruses that they've found that they believe were much more serious. But in most cases, coronaviruses seem to actually be relatively weak, to have relatively little impact on the bodies that that are carrying them, and virtually everyone has them. In 2015, there was an experiment, a mission to, and I forget the word they use now. I apologize. Lots of late night work on this because I do everything I need to do, and then starting at 8 or 9 o'clock, I start reading what I can find and looking at some of the videos. I mean, there's obviously a lot of garbage out there as well, but there's also a lot of good stuff. And people are sometimes having a hard time trying to decide what they should believe. And of course, that's a valid question that every one of us should be consciously asking, not just accept, oh, I saw this, and therefore, well, okay, you saw something, you read something, does it make sense? Let me give you an example. If you're not connected with me on Facebook, you may not have seen this. If you are, you might have seen this. If you haven't, you can go to my Facebook page and take a look. About 3 or 4 nights ago, on the 30th of March, I was in San Jose in a hotel room at 11-something Monday night. I'd come across a video of someone in New York saying, hey, here I'm in New York. They say that the hospitals are overcrowded, and there's no more space, etc. And I went to my hospital. Here's the videotape. There's no one there. There's nothing happening. I've since uncovered, and there was others doing the same thing. So I saw this and thought, well, that's interesting. And it was, again, it's late at night, right? Someone said to me, well, you could have done, you should have asked this question. You should have done that. I'm like, yeah, like most of what I do, and maybe you too, it was imperfect. It was late at night. I saw it and thought, that's interesting.